These are 15 Hollywood actresses who traded their designer gowns for orange jumpsuits. Fame usually buys protection, but for these women, the spotlight only made the fall harder. From golden age icons to modern superstars, the law eventually caught up with them all, regardless of their fame, fortune, or fan base. 15. Teresa Giudice. Teresa Giudice became the most recognizable face of the Real Housewives franchise, known for her explosive temper and dramatic table-flipping moments. But behind the cameras and the designer wardrobe, her financial situation was far more unstable than her lavish lifestyle suggested. She and her husband Joe were indicted on dozens of federal fraud charges, including deliberately concealing assets during a bankruptcy filing and submitting falsified loan applications in order to maintain their mansion lifestyle while carrying millions of dollars in debt. The case shocked fans who had watched the couple flaunt their wealth on national television for years. Teresa was sentenced to 15 months in federal prison and reported to the facility in January of 2015. She served 11 months, and during that time she famously worked in the prison kitchen for just 12 cents an hour, a humbling reality for a woman who had once spent thousands on a single dinner. While she eventually returned to television and managed to rebuild a degree of her public profile, the aftermath was devastating. Her husband Joe was later deported to Italy following his own sentence, permanently separating the family and proving that the true cost of their fraud extended far beyond any financial penalty. 14. Sophia Loren. Even the most iconic figures in cinema history are not beyond the reach of the law. Sophia Loren, widely regarded as one of the greatest actresses to ever grace the silver screen, found herself at the center of a legal storm in the early 1980s that stunned her fans worldwide. The charge was tax evasion, a dispute that had its roots in the 1970s, stemming from a disagreement over calculations on her Italian income tax return. The Italian government argued she owed a substantial sum that had gone unpaid for years. What made her case remarkable was not the charge itself, but her response to it. Rather than remain in the United States or Switzerland, where she had been living and where authorities could not easily reach her, Loren made the deliberate and deeply personal decision to return to Italy and face justice head-on. She entered a prison near Naples and served 17 days. Outside the walls, the scene was unlike anything typically associated with incarceration. Devoted fans gathered in large crowds, singing her name, holding signs, and bringing armfuls of flowers. Her brief imprisonment became a strange and deeply Italian national spectacle, a testament to how profoundly she was loved, even at her most vulnerable. 13. Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill is one of the most gifted artists of her generation, a Grammy-winning musician and actress whose voice and talent earned her a permanent place in music history. Her role in Sister Act 2 introduced her to a mainstream audience, and the miseducation of Lauryn Hill cemented her as a legend. But beneath the brilliance, a complicated relationship with the music industry and the public eye began to take a serious toll. Hill made the controversial decision to stop filing federal tax returns for several years, later explaining to the court that she had intentionally stepped away from the spotlight to protect her creative spirit from what she described as the hostile environment of the entertainment world. The Internal Revenue Service was unmoved by her explanation. By the time authorities intervened, she owed over $1 million in unpaid taxes. In 2013, she began serving a 3-month sentence at a federal correctional facility in Danbury, Connecticut. She was released later that year, but her legal difficulties did not entirely disappear. In the years that followed, fans remained on edge before each announced tour, concerned that unresolved legal obligations might force cancellations at the last moment, a frustrating shadow that lingered over an otherwise extraordinary career. 12. Brat. Long before her later television success, rapper and actress Brat had established herself as a genuine trailblazer in hip-hop, the first solo female rapper to achieve a platinum-certified album. Her roles in films like Kazam and the television series Empire further expanded her reach beyond music. But a single violent incident on a night out in Atlanta in 2007 threatened to erase everything she had built. An argument with a hostess at a nightclub escalated rapidly and turned physical. Brat struck the woman across the face with a rum bottle, leaving her with permanent facial scarring that no amount of time or treatment could fully reverse. The criminal court did not view it as a minor altercation. She entered a guilty plea to aggravated assault charges and was handed a sentence of 3 years in a Georgia state prison. She completed her time and was released in 2011. However, the legal consequences did not end there. The victim pursued a civil lawsuit, and the court ordered Brat to pay over $6 million in damages, a staggering sum that her finances could not absorb. The debt ultimately forced her to file for bankruptcy, turning one impulsive and destructive moment into a years-long financial catastrophe. 11. Lil Kim. Lil Kim is an undisputed legend of hip-hop, an artist who broke barriers, redefined the genre's possibilities for women, and built a career that transcended music into fashion, film, and television. But in the early 2000s, her fierce loyalty to the people around her put everything she had achieved at serious risk. In 2001, a confrontation broke out outside a New York radio station involving members of her entourage. The incident resulted in injuries to multiple people and quickly became the subject of a federal grand jury investigation. When Lil Kim was called to testify, she told investigators that she had not recognized any of the individuals present a claim that surveillance footage from the scene directly contradicted. She was convicted of perjury and conspiracy, having lied under oath to shield her associates from prosecution. In 2005, she entered a federal detention center in Philadelphia to begin her sentence. She served nearly 10 months, and in a move that her fans celebrated as an act of defiance, she released her critically discussed album, The Naked Truth, from behind bars. Her refusal to cooperate with federal authorities, even at enormous personal cost, only deepened her standing in the culture she helped create. 10. Paris Hilton. Long before the era of social media influencers, brand ambassadors, and content creators, there was Paris Hilton, the original celebrity who was famous, in large part simply for being famous. Her name was synonymous with excess, luxury, and the early 2000s tabloid culture that made celebrity gossip a global industry. So when the news broke in 2007 that she had been sentenced to 45 days in jail for driving with a suspended license while still on probation for a DUI, the reaction from the media was completely out of proportion to the charge itself. Television crews set up permanent positions outside the Century Regional Detention Facility. Helicopters circled overhead day and night, broadcasting live footage of the facility as though it were a scene from a major political crisis. Hilton served 23 days of her sentence, during which she reportedly experienced severe claustrophobia and recurring panic attacks in her cell. The photograph of her tearfully riding in the back of a police vehicle became one of the most reproduced images of the entire decade, a symbol of the era's obsession with celebrity downfall. In the years that followed, Hilton did something unexpected. She transformed her experience into advocacy, becoming a prominent voice, calling for reform in the troubled teen residential industry, an issue she connected to her own past. Her incarceration, rather than ending her relevance, ultimately helped redefine her public identity entirely. 9. Michelle Rodriguez. Michelle Rodriguez carved out a unique niche in Hollywood by consistently playing fierce, physically capable, rule-breaking women characters who operated on the edge of the law and rarely answered to anyone. It was a screen persona that, for a period of time, uncomfortably mirrored her real life. During the height of her visibility on the television series Lost, and within the enormously successful Fast and Furious film franchise, Rodriguez accumulated a series of DUI charges across both Hawaii and California. Authorities and courts attempted to manage the situation through probation and monitoring programs, but in 2007, a judge concluded that she had failed to take those conditions seriously. Reports emerged that she had allegedly consumed alcohol while wearing a court-mandated alcohol monitoring ankle bracelet, a direct and provable violation of the terms set by the court. She was sentenced to 180 days in a county jail facility. Due to the severe overcrowding that plagued California's correctional system at the time, she was released after serving only 18 days. While the physical duration was brief, Rodriguez later described the experience as a genuinely transformative one, a necessary confrontation with the direction her personal life had taken. She openly acknowledged in interviews that the rapid ascent to fame had caused her to lose perspective, and that the brief time in a cell had provided a reset she had not known she needed. 8. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan's trajectory from beloved child star to tabloid fixture was, without question, the most extensively documented personal unraveling of the 2000s. She had everything: talent, charm, and the kind of natural screen presence that directors and studios paid millions to capture. Her performances in The Parent Trap, Freaky Friday, and Mean Girls established her as one of the most promising young actresses of her generation. But beginning in the mid-2000s, a series of poor decisions and increasingly reckless behavior began to overshadow her professional accomplishments entirely. It was not one defining moment that led her to a correctional facility, but rather an accumulating pattern, multiple DUI incidents, accusations involving the unauthorized taking of property, and repeated violations of the probation conditions imposed by various courts. Between 2007 and 2012, she appeared in 6 separate booking photographs, each one generating more media attention than the last. Her single longest period of incarceration was 14 days in 2010, though she spent considerably more time confined under house arrest. There were periods when it seemed as though a full recovery professionally or personally might simply never come. But in a story that defied easy predictions, Lohan managed the remarkable. By 2025, she had completed a full-scale return to Hollywood, anchoring the highly anticipated sequel, Freakier Friday, and reminding audiences exactly why they had fallen for her in the first place. Her story became, against all odds, one of genuine and lasting redemption. 7. Felicity Huffman. When the FBI's sweeping college admissions investigation became public in 2019, 2 of the biggest names swept up in the scandal were both well-known actresses, but their responses to the crisis could not have been more different. Desperate Housewives star Felicity Huffman was charged with paying $15,000 to arrange for a professional test taker to secretly correct her daughter's SAT responses after they were submitted, artificially inflating her score. The scheme was carefully coordinated and involved a network of fixers, consultants, and complicit administrators operating across multiple states. Unlike some of her co-defendants, Huffman did not attempt to fight the charges or construct an alternative narrative for the public. Within weeks, she entered a guilty plea, delivered a public statement that many observers described as genuinely remorseful, and expressed direct acknowledgement of what she had done to her daughter, to other students, and to the institutions involved. She was sentenced to 14 days of incarceration and served 11 of them at a correctional facility in Dublin, California. The speed and sincerity of her response to the scandal allowed the court of public opinion to begin its own process of reassessment relatively quickly. By 2024, she had returned to performing, taking on a significant theatrical production in London, evidence that accountability, delivered without deflection, can sometimes open doors that defiance would have permanently closed. 6. Loughlin. For millions of viewers who grew up watching Full House, Loughlin was practically inseparable from the character of Aunt Becky, a warm, dependable, and morally grounded maternal presence in one of American television's most beloved family comedies. That carefully cultivated image collapsed almost entirely in March of 2019, when federal prosecutors revealed the details of Operation Varsity Blues, a nationwide investigation into the corruption of elite university admissions. Loughlin and her husband, fashion designer Massimo Giannulli, had allegedly paid $500,000 in fraudulent fees to have their 2 daughters admitted to the University of Southern California under the false pretense that they were competitive rowing athletes. The evidence included photographs of the daughters posed on rowing machines, equipment they had reportedly never used in any athletic context, submitted as part of fabricated athletic profiles. The images circulated rapidly online and became objects of widespread mockery. Unlike Huffman, Loughlin initially maintained a posture of resistance, reportedly rejecting early plea offers and choosing to contest the charges. She eventually accepted a deal in May of 2020 and served 2 months at a federal facility in Dublin, California. Upon her release, she made a gradual and carefully managed return to television work, primarily through the faith-based Great American Family channel. But the persona she had spent 30 years constructing, that of America's most trustworthy television mother, had been permanently and irreparably compromised. 5. Amy Locane. Amy Locane arrived in Hollywood in the early 1990s with genuine momentum behind her. Her role in the John Waters film Cry Baby, alongside Johnny Depp, drew critical attention, and her subsequent appearance on the primetime drama Melrose Place introduced her to a massive mainstream audience. For a time, she seemed positioned for a long and successful career. But on the night of June 27, 2010, everything changed. Locane was driving through Montgomery Township, New Jersey, with an alcohol concentration measured at more than 3 times the legal limit when her vehicle collided with another car. The other vehicle was being driven by Fred Seaman, and his wife, 60-year-old Helene Seaman, lost her life as a result of the collision. The legal process that followed was unusually prolonged and contentious. She was initially sentenced to 3 years, served her time, and was released in 2015. But the prosecution appealed, arguing to the appellate court that the original sentence failed to reflect the true gravity of the offense and the suffering of the Seaman family. In a decision that was legally rare and deeply significant, the appeals court agreed. Locane was ordered back to prison in 2020. She was finally released again in December of 2024, having navigated a legal process that stretched across more than a decade, a sobering demonstration of how the consequences of a single night of reckless decision-making can echo through an entire lifetime. 4. Jen Shah. Jen Shah built her public identity on spectacle. As one of the most outspoken and visually extravagant cast members of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, she presented herself as a woman of extraordinary means. Surrounded by staff she called her Shah Squad, and draped in the kind of luxury that most viewers could only observe from a distance. The reality, as federal investigators eventually revealed, was drastically different. Shah had allegedly been operating a wide-reaching telemarketing fraud scheme for years, targeting vulnerable individuals, many of them elderly, and defrauding them of their savings through deceptive business opportunity schemes. Federal agents arrived to execute the arrest, while cameras were still rolling for the reality show, a moment that became one of the most surreal in the franchise's history. Shah initially responded with indignation, publicly insisting on her innocence and suggesting the charges were exaggerated or baseless. Then, in July of 2022, she abruptly reversed course and entered a guilty plea in a Manhattan federal courtroom. The judge sentenced her to 6.5 years. She reported to FCI Mariana in Florida in February of 2023. Her sentence was subsequently reduced, and she was released on the 10th of December, 2025. She now faces the complicated and unglamorous process of rebuilding a reputation that her own decisions dismantled from the inside out. 3. Shannon Richardson. Shannon Richardson had appeared in a handful of recognizable television productions, including a brief role as a background character on The Walking Dead, but she was far from a household name. What brought her into national headlines in 2013 had nothing to do with acting. That spring, letters containing ricin, an extraordinarily potent biological toxin derived from castor beans, for which there is no antidote, were intercepted before reaching their intended recipients. President Barack Obama and New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, both of whom had been vocal advocates for stricter firearms regulations. What made the case particularly sinister was the opening move Richardson made. Rather than wait for investigators to close in, she approached authorities herself and identified her husband, Nathaniel Richardson, as the person responsible for sending the letters. She presented what she claimed was supporting evidence and positioned herself as a concerned spouse, turning in a dangerous partner. The story began to fall apart almost immediately. Polygraph examinations produced results that contradicted her account, and a forensic review of her internet search history revealed that she, not her husband, had been researching ricin production and letter delivery methods. She had been pregnant at the time of the offense. Prosecutors argued the scheme was motivated by a desire to remove her husband from her life. The federal judge sentenced her to 18 years. As of early 2026, she remains confined at a federal facility in Texas, with her scheduled release not anticipated until late 2028. 2. Skylar Deleon. Few cases in the history of California's criminal courts have produced testimony as disturbing as what emerged from the prosecution of Skylar Deleon. As a child, Deleon had appeared in an episode of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a connection that would later be cited in nearly every media report covering the case. But the person who stood trial in 2008 bore no resemblance to the image of innocent childhood that reference evoked. In November of 2004, Deleon and several associates responded to a classified advertisement placed by Thomas and Jackie Hawks, a retired couple from Prescott, Arizona, who were selling their yacht, The Well. Deserved from a marina in Newport Beach, California, Deleon presented as a serious buyer and requested a sea trial. Once the vessel was beyond the harbor and out of sight of the shore, the situation changed. Deleon and the accomplices on board restrained the couple, coerced them under extreme duress into signing over the title to the boat and other assets, bound them with rope to the vessel's anchor chain, and forced them overboard into the open Pacific Ocean while they were still alive. Their remains were never recovered. The trial also connected Deleon to 2 additional fatal incidents, resulting in a total of 3 homicide convictions. The sentence handed down was the maximum available under California law. While incarcerated, Deleon transitioned and now lives as a woman within the California prison system. Due to the state's ongoing moratorium on carrying out capital sentences, she is expected to remain incarcerated indefinitely. 1. Allison Mack. To the millions of viewers who followed Smallville across its 10-season run on the WB and the CW, Allison Mack was inseparable from the character of Chloe Sullivan, the sharp, loyal, endlessly resourceful best friend of Clark Kent, who became one of the series' most beloved supporting figures. It made the revelations that emerged in 2018 all the more difficult to reconcile. Mack had become deeply embedded in NXIVM, an organization that presented itself publicly as a self-improvement and professional development program, but which federal prosecutors described as a criminal enterprise that exploited and controlled its members through psychological manipulation, financial coercion, and the threat of releasing damaging personal information that members had been required to provide as so-called collateral. Within the organization's inner circle, Mack held significant rank. Prosecutors presented evidence that she had personally recruited women into a secret subgroup, used psychological pressure to obtain their compliance, and facilitated arrangements in which female members were subjected to branding and exploitation by the organization's leader, Keith Raniere. She pleaded guilty in 2019 to racketeering and racketeering conspiracy charges. In June of 2021, a federal judge sentenced her to 3 years in federal prison. She served her time at a facility in Dublin, California, and was released in July of 2023 after completing approximately 21 months. By late 2025, she had broken her silence publicly for the first time, speaking about her experience in the organization, the harm she had caused, and her ongoing effort to understand how she had arrived at such a profoundly different place from the values she believed she held. It was a reckoning, as public as the fall that preceded it.